All right. Hello, everyone. This is Spencer Michaud, and today I am joined by my good friend Shu Yap, and we're going to be talking about the astrology of July today. So, welcome, Shu. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Spencer. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
This is so exciting because Shu and I have become fast friends from some communications over the back channels, and just I think there's a I don't know, I just have a lot of respect for the work that you do, Shu, and think you're an astrological genius. And I'm so very excited that you are here with me today. So tell me a little bit more about yourself, Shu, and introduce yourself to the audience here.
Yep. So, and thank you, Spencer. That's such an honor coming from you because same here. I really respect the work you do, and I think we have very similar minds and interests in the type of astrology that we like. But really, I've been a hermit for about 20 years, and it's only been the last couple of years that I have had my astrological coming out, and that was quite nerve-wracking. But it is something that's always been a part of my life. I literally just woke up one day on my nodal return at 19 and thought, oh, I've got to study astrology, and it all started from there. I think also having influences of my Taoist background, my father being passed since I was a little girl, and just having him as an influence spiritually has kind of led me to this as well. But also just a general interest for understanding people and the magical aspects of life is something that really drives me and my passion. And today I live very closely to the environment, and everything I do is, I always say astrology is a lifestyle, not a livelihood for me, because it really does influence everything I do on the farm and just the way that I, raise my children and all this sort of stuff. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
I'm so envious of your off the grid lifestyle, I have to admit. Here's a really interesting thing for astrologers. I bet that I'm guessing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that the sky that you see is a pretty incredible sky where you live. Is there a lot of light pollution where you live, or is it pretty clear skies?
No, there's not much light pollution at all. And besides the full moon, really, that's my only light pollution. So yeah, we're very lucky. And I pinch myself every morning and in the evenings when I look around and just think, oh God, it's so beautiful. And I just love that the dawn and the dusk, those liminal spaces when the sun's rising and the sun's setting, it's so magical. All the animals are out, and, there's just this surrealness in the world, So yeah, I'm very lucky. But having said that, the off-grid lifestyle is not for everyone. I mean, the lengths I have to go to just have this computer running and to have batteries, pre-charged and, lighting all ready to go. Like, it's a pain. It's not convenient at all, but it's my life.
Yeah, and so you're basically living in your own little dark sky park, which is awesome, right? I think for us around here, we have to drive 9 or 10 hours north to get to a place where there's not, so much light pollution where we can't really see the sky. And just having that visceral, direct experience of the stars is I think gives you such a unique perspective on all this. And I really applaud you for your commitment to the off-grid lifestyle. I know that it's not an easy life, and I have some friends that are living not completely off the grid, but are pursuing more of that life, and they are pretty hardcore too. And there's pluses and minuses for sure, but what an interesting way about living next to nature and within the seasons, and really having that be the guide for your life. It's something that I hope that I can move closer to as I go along the journey here. But yeah, super cool. I'm glad that you're using some of your solar power to talk to us today. Is that correct?
Well, all the batteries are pre-charged. I've got the car inverter as backup, through the window. Hopefully we don't need to use it. But, I have this theory that if everyone in the world can live off grid for 1 year, that the world would be a better place, because we all become so conscious of the power that we're using and the resources and the energy that's required to just do anything, to cook dinner, to get clean water, and to, even going to the bathroom, all this sort of stuff. It's just such a, everything needs to be thought of.
Totally. And it super seems to be in alignment with that Taoist background that you were speaking of as well, with coming into alignment with the cyclical nature of things and whatnot. And I'm really going to be curious to hear some of your thoughts on the I-Ching reading that we do today. Do you have some experience with the I-Ching as an oracle?
No, I don't actually. Isn't that terrible? The way I see it is I was kind of plonked into Western civilization with all this sort of Eastern esoteric images that had to come out with no guide besides, invisible ones. And I had to kind of find an external vehicle for that. And that vehicle was Hermeticism. Yeah. Western, which is very similar, I guess, to the Taoist philosophy, but that was the way that I could get all this stuff that I was born into out into the world. But as at my last nodal return at 38, 39, 36 to 38, I did go back to the temple where my father worked. And it was like a homecoming, and I just saw everything that I do with my rituals and ceremonial work was very much the same as what everyone was doing there, So, and my father was the assistant to the priest there, who would run weekly trance sessions and make talismans and healings and all this sort of stuff. Even my name was actually divined from that priest.
That is so cool. I have so much to learn. You and I should have almost a whole show, I think, on that at some point if you're interested. I'm very, very interested in learning more. I wanted to give a shout out to Benabel Wen too, because she has a lot of really interesting material on this and is a great teacher, and teaches classes on these topics as well.
Yeah, we should get her on your show. I'm so keen to have a conversation with her because there's so many unanswered questions for me. I have no way of communicating to my relatives because of the different languages, all this sort of stuff. So it's been a real mysterious puzzle for me to try and piece together. Totally. So, yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the chat here, and if you are joining us in digital land, let us know that you're here. Tell us where you're coming from. We usually have a fairly international crowd in these chats. We usually have people dropping in from Finland, although it's probably either really late or really early there right now. We've got some folks in the Netherlands that usually stop by, but if you're around, say hi in the chat box. We've got Tanya says, yay, greetings from inside the house. Very excited for this chat. This is my lovely partner, Tanya, who helps participate in these chats sometimes, and gave us a number of camel facts last time, because we pull not only an I-Ching for the breeding that we do, but I like to get an animal spirit guide for the things that we're going through with the astrology as well. And for the last eclipse and the full moon, we had a camel. So she is the camel expert. And we pulled the grasshopper today. So some interesting things to think about making leaps forward and kind of charging our energy to be able to catapult into a new reality. And I think that we might see that as we go along, that it might be a kind of a loading the spring type of energy and then moving forward into a new reality. Those were some of the things that I was coming across. We have Astrotherapy stopping by. Tanya says that off-grid living would be transformational in so many ways. Shizumi is here from California saying hi. Casey Jones says hello from Oregon, and Chris Peterson is here from Iowa City, Iowa. So we've got some nice people participating in the chat. So if at any point you all have questions, and for me or for Shu, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll try to do the best we can with that. We're going to do a deep dive on the astrology of July today, and one thing I love about Shu is how thorough she is. She, I think matches my own obsession with detail. Yeah,
No, I
Shu.
could never match that. And I have messy handwriting too, so.
Well, Shu helped me out with a horror not too long ago, and I was super impressed with the amount of work and detail that she put into it. And so I'm just really excited to hear your insights as we move along here. We've got Top Notch Vintage is here from, I believe, are they from England? I think you're from England, is stopping by. Just got here, but it's late, so I might flake out. Don't flake out, Top Notch Vintage. We're just getting started. And Dimfy is here from the Netherlands. Yeah, okay. So let's talk about July. Shu, do you have any overarching thoughts that are coming up? Some like general thoughts about the astrology of July?
I do look at July as like the aftermath of June. So whilst June had some really acute, drastic things happen with the eclipse and Saturn-Uranus perfection, and specifically in our area of the world, we had massive storms that have knocked over lots of trees. Still, people are without power today, without power, water, without homes. And I think in July, as all these personal planets start to align with that Saturn-Uranus configuration, all things are starting to get personal now. The visceral, like, how do we actually deal with the cleanup? It's affecting us on that daily level, as opposed to, wow, this is a big catastrophe that just happened. So, and I think you guys had some big power outage in Texas or something.
Yeah, that was was that recent or a few months ago?
I think it was something to do around the Saturn-Uranus square. I heard that there was
See
a
how
big...
up to date I'm in.
Yeah.
but I will say, piggybacking off of that, Texas is a unique situation here in America because they are on their own power grid. They're not connected to the rest of the power grid in the country. And over the winter, they had huge power outages, and a lot of people were, their pipes were freezing. There was a huge crisis down in Texas because they had this cold snap that came through that really, shot people's energy bills up, and maybe they're experiencing something like that as well. I know we've been having record heat waves along the West Coast, around California, Oregon, the Pacific Northwest, and places of that nature, where we've seen routinely temperatures above 100 up to 120 degrees for many, many days in a row. That's out of the ordinary. That's not normal for those times.
Yeah, I did read something about people having to take shifts with putting their air conditioner on because it was going to overload their system. So I just thought, wow, that's such a Saturnian, like the Saturnian infrastructure and the systems all crumbling down,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, everything that we're seeing through July has to be contextualized in that big transit of that Saturn-Uranus square, right? And some of those themes, if we want to kind of review that real quick, we've got Saturn in Aquarius, which is a very strong placement for Saturn. So the way I understand it is Saturn is very much a pure expression of Saturn energy, of the kind of like the need to think collectively in that sign, the need to hover above from that 30,000 foot perspective to realize that the actions that we're taking have an effect on each other. And with that square with Uranus, we're seeing it come into contact with definitely the material resources that we share as a community as well. And this kind of tension between the old way of doing something and the very real necessity for the new, and for the new approach to dealing with things as a global community. And I mean, it's just my mind is blown now that you and I are talking, like, just over these airwaves, from literally opposite ends of the earth, and thinking about that and contextualizing that with Saturn, Uranus, and how the actions that we're taking here in our country are affecting your country, and things of that nature, and realizing that we're so connected in these ways, to me, is the most important thing with this transit with Saturn and Uranus.
And I think personally, what I really found with the Saturn-Uranus square is this year I had kind of decided I was going to give up on technology. I'm just going to be one of these old people that go, how do you do this? Like, what do you press? And it's been a real grapple to try and keep like being up to speed with technology. And I felt like it was just a futile effort, and that, yeah, I've just really struggled with that. Being a Saturnian person myself, I've just really struggled with keeping up the pace of like all these new apps and all these new, I don't even know what they are, but just to be able to stay working, I have to, make that Uranian leap, and so somewhere everyone's going to have this kind of dichotomy in their lives in some way, between the old and the new.
I love your Instagram though, so please don't stop posting on your Instagram.
That's the only thing I do. That's the only thing.
Yeah, there was a post you did recently that I was just like, that's amazing. Like, I think you had a picture of a dead rabbit, and you were like, here's roadkill dinner, and you were talking about a kangaroo that got into your compost bin. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. Tell me more about this story before we get into the nitty-gritty here.
It's just a normal day in the life of Shu. I wake up and there's this rabbit head on the front door. I went to empty out the compost. There's a dead kangaroo in there, and we love compost. So I'm always going around gathering poo and animal parts or whatever to try and build the fertility here. And then my friend drops off a couple of big bags of comfrey, which I've wanted to revegetate around our culvert, our big drain, for a while. And because I'm a tight ass, I don't buy plants. I always just propagate and divide. And so I got 2 big bags of comfrey that I planted out. And then I, had spent the whole morning also collecting firewood and, feeling really prepared. I thought, wow, this is like all this abundance that Jupiter is giving me. And this was the day that Jupiter was stationing. And comfrey is a Jupiter herb. And it was given to me by a very Sagittarian friend. And I thought, wow, is it not just loud and clear that Jupiter's stationing today? It's just amazing.
I didn't realize the kangaroo was dead. I thought it was just digging through the compost.
Oh, no, it was dead. My husband wants to put it in there. I usually like to dig a hole and put it under a tree or something, but right. That's just the lazy way, just chuck it in the compost.
Yeah. Incredible. It's like I said, it's fascinating to hear such a different experience from what I'm living. I'm endlessly curious. I have Venus in Gemini, so like hearing just this completely different life experience is really a treat. So I appreciate you sharing your stories. I'm looking at some comments here. We've got Aaron is here from Des Moines in Iowa. Corey G says 115 is the forecast in Portland, Oregon, exceeding their all-time record by almost 10 degrees. Heat wave there is not only unprecedented, but expected to be prolonged. And Casey Jones says, yes, the Texas outages happened twice. The first in February when the first square happened, and then it happened again at this last square because of the air conditioners running during the extreme heat. Crazy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay. Deborah is here. So hello, Deborah. And Tanya says, I love the jovial herbs flowing. Comfrey is so healing and awesome.
So good.
All right. So let's share the chart here and we'll kind of break it down step by step. So everybody is realizing that everything we're talking about is painted on the canvas of Saturn-Uranus square. And we're going to be seeing both Mars and Venus going through this territory, making the oppositions to Saturn and then the square to Uranus respectively. So we'll see that over the course of the month. Okay, so this is the chart. Are you able to see that, Shu?
Yep.
Okay, so we've got July 1st up here on the chart. And the first thing I wanted to talk about and break down a little bit is I want to just kind of set the scene for the decanic, the solar decanic period of time. So we can kind of break this into 3 chunks as we go. So from July 1st to July the 11th, we're going to be seeing the sun moving through the 2nd decan of Cancer. And this is going to be associated with this 3 of Cups kind of experience with the tarot. Austin Coppock calls this the walled garden. Book T and Book of Thoth call it abundance. We have a few fixed stars in this decan: Alhina at 10 degrees Cancer, Sirius at 14 Cancer, and Canopus at 15 Cancer. Austin Coppock calls this the hothouse flower decan, the walled garden. So I interpret that as to the way that he's describing it is we have tried to find a source of nurturing in that first decan of Cancer, and now we're trying to protect that very vulnerable creation that we're trying to bring into the world, nurturing, protective growth. And it was associated with the three graces who were attendants to the gods. Shu, what do you think about Cancer 2 and some of the maybe the significations and the kind of the condition of the sun moving through this area of the zodiac? We'll start out generally, and then we'll get more in depth.
Yeah, well, I feel the sun's not that comfortable in Cancer. It can't see its own sign. So from an essential dignity perspective, it's a bit panicky, not having the visibility that it likes. So it's on edge a little bit. It's Cancer is a cool, moist sign, and the sun's very hot and dry. So temperamentally, they're both very incongruent to each other. So I think in that regard, it's a challenge for the sun to be in Cancer.
Yeah, totally. I agree. This is the decan that my sun is in, and I can attest to being uncomfortable with some solar things at times. The sun is peregrine in Cancer, which means it is a wanderer. It doesn't have any of its own essential dignity. And I love the fact that you're pointing out that it can't see its own home too. Its home sign being Leo. So what Shu is pointing out here is that we have this sun that's in aversion to its own house. And it's really making it difficult for these two planets right here that it's trying to provide resources for, both Venus and Mars. So it's kind of like, I heard Martin Hermes talk about this in a way that I really liked. He said, and I think he was kind of going back to Robert Schmidt and talking about the planet in the house can be thought of as the potter, and the planet that is the dispositor or the host of those planets is the clay. So we've got like these planets, Mars and Venus in Leo, trying to take some kind of action, some kind of verb. But the noun that they have, the sun, is, there's no resources to be able to draw upon, right? There's nothing. There's no line of sight, no communication between the two.
And so when you can't see something, you get a bit panicky because you don't know what's in front of you. It's like having strangers in your house. You've got no idea what they're doing there. But, all your stuff's there. So you're a bit worried about, what they're going to do with it all. So that's what the sun's doing right now.
Yeah. And right as the sun moves into, as we click the calendar over to on July 1st, and just to give a disclaimer or a caveat, if you're listening in Australia, it's going to be a little bit of a different time zone experience, and our dates might be a little bit wonky because Shu is living 10 hours in the future, or I'm living 10 hours in the past, however you want to see that.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind when we're talking about specific dates. Make sure you make an adjustment for your location. But the first thing that stands out to me on July the 1st is this opposition between Mars and Saturn is perfecting. And also bringing in that Saturn-Uranus square. So this is one big old T-square between Mars, Saturn, and Uranus. So break this down for us, Shu. What are we looking at here?
Okay, so this is where the first instance of the visceral, personal impacts, feelings of the impact of June starts to come into play. So Mars is going to want to bring action. It may come into some roadblocks, around dealing with, the events of June. And that can look like clashes, conflict. It can look like, aggression maybe, but frustration. and just a tension that really wants to spur us into some kind of decision or action in some sort of way. But because of the combinations of planets at play, it's like they're all butting heads. So I can kind of see a bit of a stalemate happening before any action's being taken, really. But the one thing that I find interesting is that as soon as this opposition perfects, Mars is actually going to be overcoming Saturn and therefore having more agency and power and rule. So when planets overcome, what it essentially means is that they're rising before the planet that they're overcoming, which gives them a little bit more power. So up until the opposition, I think there's going to be more walls and resistance and conservatism of Saturn. But after the opposition, I think there's going to be more, I guess, rebellion, action, and moving forward with things, for right or for wrong.
Yeah, that's a great point, Shu. And I like the key word that I'm pulling out of that is this frustration energy, where Mars is a planet of action, also of severing and separating. So there is conflict that is coming up, probably due to trying to assert some kind of personal agenda. This is this decan, Leo 2, is associated with the Six of Wands. So we may be trying to get to a personal victory of some sort, but we have something that's standing in the way. And what's standing in the way, if we looked at this decanically in tarot, is the Six of Swords, a need to move on from the past. There's something from the past that we're not, taking into account that is blocking a lot of our forward motion. I think that the other word that's coming up for me with this, just especially hearing you talk about the Mars moving into that overcoming position, that catapult energy. If we think about the grasshopper animal spirit for this reading today, we are loading the spring, really. And I think that Mars Saturn energy is really loading this spring so that there's going to be a leap forward, and it could be a leap forward of positive energy. It could be a leap forward of aggressive energy. But wherever we are now, whatever this frustration that you're feeling, there is going to be a release of that tension, and it may be pretty intense and pretty, like, maybe even unexpected too, with like the Uranus being in the mix here. But I do think delays are definitely a part of it.
Yeah, it's like the more delays and frustrations and the Saturnian overcoming period beforehand is just creating more tension for that spring. So the greater the tension, the further the acceleration when it can. So, you can look at that as a positive light. But I like what you said about the proving oneself, because that's how I see Mars. Mars wants to, individuate. It wants to prove that I can do this and nobody's going to keep me down. And so wherever Mars in your chart, that's where you want to really show how you can make it out there on your own without any help, So I think we're going to see things start to mobilize from July very quickly, especially with Mercury being direct now. I think, things are going to start moving towards a solution of some sort. And that might look difficult, but it's almost an inevitable path.
Yeah. And we just saw, like you said, we saw Mercury stationing direct. We also saw Jupiter stationing retrograde. Do you have some thoughts on that kind of the difference between those two and how those energies are playing out right now with retrograde Jupiter and direct Mercury?
Yeah, the handing over of the baton. I see Jupiter going retrograde not as big of a deal as, say, when Mercury goes retrograde. I find when the bigger planets start to turn backwards, it's more around a gathering and consolidation and of thoughts and ideas to really try and, I guess, make sure that they vibe with your inner world and make sure that, that they're aligned in some sort of way. So I don't think we'll feel that going backwards of Jupiter in as much of a visceral way as we would with Mercury moving direct. I'm not sure if you felt it, but I really have felt things are moving much faster since Mercury has turned direct.
Definitely. Yeah. Things have definitely started to speed up in my life in particular. And I'm feeling the tension of the cardinal or the fixed cross for sure, because I'm a Leo ascendant. So I'm dealing with this in a very personal way, and we'll see what happens. I'm the way that I'm dealing with it personally is trying to be patient, trying not to let my emotions get the better of me, seeing things from a long-term perspective. I think that that's what Saturn's asking Mars to do right now, is cool off a little bit, slow down. You know, you're still going to be able to assert yourself in an authentic way eventually, but there may be some things that you have to make adjustments to for the good of your long-term viability, right? Instead of this like, oh, I want this and I have to have it right now. It's that kind of it's a healthy boundary, right? I think sometimes Saturn can be that healthy boundary.
Yeah. Mars quite, I think Mars is quite happy in Leo, you know. I mean, it can probably get a bit hot-headed, but you know, it's got the same vibe, the hot and dry sort of nature of the sign and the planet together.
Yeah, definitely. And one book that you turned me on to was a Tiny Universe by Joy Usher. And one of the things that I've been really leaning on with Joy's book as I work my way through it, kind of skipping around, but also inch by inch, was her treatment of Saturn and Aquarius in general, and talking about the boundaries that Saturn creates through the air sign of Aquarius being more like a glass ceiling type of experience, where it may be a limiting belief rather than a physical limitation. So I thought that was really interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah. So maybe we're feeling passionate about something, but we're running up against the limitations of our beliefs, where we think that we can't move any further. And we have to really leave those beliefs behind to actually move forward with our life. Okay. I'm checking in on the chat here. Lisa is here from New York. She says, it's funny that the sun is so high in Cancer. Yeah. Talking about that being the solstice and the peak of that solar energy. One thing that sticks out to me with Cancer is it's a turning point, isn't it? It's like all the cardinal signs are the seasonal turnings, and it's the beginning of descent. And I talked about this on my full moon podcast with a couple other friends, where we were talking about the kind of the solar sacrifice that happens right at solstice point, where it's the beginning of the descent. Now this is interesting because we have a Southern Hemisphere astrologer here, and I'm curious so what's your take on that? That's a huge topic, but a brief, like, how do you experience the archetypal, almost like seasonal type of things being on the Southern Hemisphere?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. And the way I kind of approach it is that I just view everything in terms of its symbolic nature. You know, I don't view that particular symbol as coming out in a concrete reality. And, you know, I'm all for, you know, bringing out internal symbols into the outside world, but that's one thing that I keep symbolically inside of me as a conceptual idea of, you know, the sun making that transition. So yeah, it's, you know, there's not much you can do, although the seasons are changing, I think, due to climate change. You know, we're finding summers becoming later or winters coming earlier, things like this. So maybe one day we might all align again, but that won't be in our lifetime. Thank goodness.
So many things to think about with that, for sure. Corey G says that the sun in Cancer is an aversion to both malefics. That's positive or redeeming? Question. I think so, right? On some level, right? I mean, it can't hurt. I mean, and I say that literally, that the malefics generally can't hurt the sun if they're in aversion, correct, Shu? I think I'm interpreting that correct.
Yes, that's right. I mean, we also look at things like antitia and contra antitia and things like that too. So we will see later on, we'll see Venus will be making an anticia to Uranus. But I don't want to jump too far ahead.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Yeah, we should keep going though. We'll be here all night, won't we? Let me see. Okay, let's move forward here. I can try to get to some more of the questions in the chat, but I want to be respectful of Shu's time and make sure that I don't keep her here for like 4 hours.
Oh, it's all good.
Okay, so I'm going to move forward to July the 3rd, and this is where we start to see the next aspect that is going to perfect. We're going to see Mars moving from that opposition, separating from that opposition to Saturn to a square with Uranus. So what kind of energy are we transferring here, Shu?
Right. Well, from a textbook perspective, that Mars-Uranus is this kind of rebel on the loose, the reckless behavior, taking risky actions, the delinquency, that kind of thing. But I feel with Uranus in Venus's sign, where I feel like there's some creative solutions that are going to be opened up at this stage, with all the energetic, outward sort of action-orientated nature of Mars activating this very stalemate tension, and Venus, they're trying to reconcile everything. I think maybe this might be the beginning of maybe that breakthrough. There's some crack that's starting to emerge, like some creative solution to a long-term problem kind of thing. And it makes sense being the second iteration of the Saturn-Uranus square. Like, you want to hope that there's some kind of, turning point in that stalemate at some stage. That might be around now.
And we've got one more Saturn-Uranus square towards the end of the year, correct? Do you remember the date of that offhand? I can't recall off the top of my head.
It's December. I think 24th of December. I think for us, I think 23rd for you guys.
Gotcha.
I just remember it being near Christmas.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've got a few months to kind of pick up the pieces from the fallout of this second chapter in the cycle. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head, that there is some help that we're going to be getting with Venus. One thing that sticks out to me with Uranus in the second decan of Taurus is this is the Six of Pentacles card in the tarot. And one of the things that has come up in my studies with Taurus two themes is the theme of generosity and distribution of resources, but also the theme of consistency in routines, and Uranus disrupting our routines through some kind of environmental resource-based shakeup. So that's one thing that I think I could add to what she was saying, is just that, Mars-Uranus is a very disruptive aspect, and potentially there could be in your personal life some disruption based on trying to assert your maybe authority, your authenticity, potentially getting fired up in a situation where pride could be, bringing you into conflict and disrupting a normal routine that you might have. And the other caution I would have for both of these aspects is these planets are moving through fixed signs too, and a tendency to dig your heels in a position is definitely on the table or in the cards. So I would also recommend trying to use that Mercury and Gemini to see things from multiple perspectives. Try to get clarity with it too, because the other thing that we're kind of, that's in the background here is Mercury Neptune square, right? That's kind of coloring our minds and our thought processes as well. Okay, I'm going to skip forward here. If we look at July 4th, this is, of course, Independence Day in America. We do have I just want to touch on this briefly, but we have a Taurus moon conjoined Uranus. So a nice moon, but squaring, very much in activating all of these T-square energies. Be careful with your fireworks is what I will say. Oh my goodness. Explosive aspects like Mars-Uranus are Probably not the type that you want to be holding a giant firework in your hand. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the moon is also perhaps making us feel more into the discomfort and making it more comfortable with the changes and the disruptions, maybe accepting it a little bit more, because, you know, the moon's siding with Uranus here. It's wanting to bring our emotional, embodied sense to this kind of what is this newness, you know? Okay, let's start feeling it, and let's start getting used to it. Let's get a habitual sort of resonance with it. So that's, yeah.
I like that. I like that. And, you know, usually Taurus moons are pretty nice times with it being in its exaltation, and maybe a good time to have a barbecue or something too.
That's right. I mean, yeah. Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's move forward on the 5th. Just a minor aspect here, but the sun is going to be making a sextile with Uranus. So that's a harmonious aspect of the nature of Venus.
And that happens at the same time when the moon is with Uranus. So, you know, a good flow of, you know, ego and emotions, I guess.
I like that.
Using that time to, you know, really get comfortable with the changes, start accepting them.
That's one of the hardest things as a human being, isn't it? Accepting change. And I think it's one of the things.
Sign, yes.
I think I always like to say, I have a little saying that I say sometimes, is that sometimes pain or things that we may not want are inevitable, but suffering is a choice, I think, sometimes. And I consider suffering like trying to swim upstream against whatever experience that you are going through. And so even if you're going through a decline or a decrease or something, a challenge, you know, going with that change versus trying to completely resist what needs to happen in your life, I think can be kind of the steam valve on some level, you know? All right. Yep. So let's go forward. Let's keep on rolling. All right. So on the 6th, July the 6th, the day before my birthday.
Ooh.
We'll see what happens here. So all this is baked into my solar return, all this fun stuff on the 6th. So we have the Mercury Neptune square perfecting on July the 6th. And also at the same time, we have Venus making its opposition to Saturn. All right, Shu, guide us through these aspects here.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I have been loving this Mercury-Neptune square. Oh my goodness, it's been so good. Of just being able to, I've had a very real sense of my inner world being in front of me. I've started a Jungian reading group, you know, analysis sort of group under this aspect, which I had not planned to do. I just stumbled across it, and it's been amazing. And I'm just learning so much, just about the merging of our symbolic minds with the creative outer world life. And I find that this Mercury and Neptune square has been a real journey of showing us what really exists. Like, our minds just don't even, aren't used to just such a greater expanse the world is actually open to. And this aspect's really highlighted that to me. And I'm just so sad to see it go, but I'm so excited to keep investigating what exists, you know, beyond this physical world. Like you said, we both have 12th house suns, and I've always got one foot out the door anyway. So this is this has been great for me. But how have you experienced this transit?
Well, let me first say that that's the most positive and hopeful interpretation that I've heard of this so far, which I'm here for, because Lord knows that sometimes I need to be able to see the bright side of things. I can tend to fixate sometimes on what needs to be remedied. I would say that my experience has been a mixed bag. I think that I've been having a lot of really great opportunities come up to make new friends. I think that that's one thing that I've noticed with this. I have Mercury in the 11th house, and it's I've been making friends from all over the world with this aspect. You know, I've got friends in the Middle East that I've been talking to about astrology, friends in Europe. You and I have been having some really great conversations on opposite ends of the earth. So I like, I can see that that fits into that type of experience, seeing that there's so much more out there than you may have thought. I would say one thing that's, and sometimes it's hard to parse out which aspect is doing what. And maybe this was some of the Venus opposite Pluto stuff, but it could be Mercury square Neptune for me too. But I've had real difficulty um, rejoining society after the restrictions were lifted here in our country. I've had a lot of friends that have asked me to get together with them in person, or a few, not a lot. It's not like I'm just like swimming in invitations all the time, but a few good friends that have been wanting to get together, and I think I've been struggling with the heightened awareness of danger and transitioning from that and trying to decipher what is real and what isn't, and what is what do I need to be aware of, and what do I need to have as a thought to keep me from experiencing what I don't want to, versus what is just a limiting belief. And you know, I'm working it out one day at a time. Like I said, I have a lot of envy for your situation as far as being able to just get away from it all, because you know it's harder to do where we're at here. But yeah, I like your hopeful take on it, though. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I was also thinking with all your your Virgo-ness, you know, this might be a bit, you know, like pulling the ground from under your feet kind of feeling, just this shakiness. But I'm not very detailed at all as a person. I've got a top house Mercury, so I guess I'm on home territory with this aspect.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing I could add with the Mercury Neptune square is just thinking about it from that Decanic Tarot perspective. I like to think of that third decan of Gemini as a choice that needs to be made. We see the 10 of Swords squaring the 10 of Cups. So there is this beautiful idealistic vision, but there's maybe some challenges with making the choice that needs to be made. A lot of the stories that I tell with Gemini is that story of Castor and Pollux and the twins, where one twin has to give up some of its immortality so that the other slain twin can live again. And I think that one thing that I've been experiencing with this too is that there have been, you know, Mercury, I think in Gemini is showing you multiple pathways. It's just saying, it's saying, that's how I experience Mercury in Gemini, is saying, okay, here's all these different options. Whereas if we contrast that with Virgo, it's saying, what do we need to pare down? Which of these options do we need to eliminate to store for the winter or for whatever it is? And I think that there may be, I've experienced a little bit of confusion about which direction do I really want to pursue? What do I really want to breathe life into? Because instead of just thinking about it as letting go and one twin dying, you have to think about, what do we want to, you know, infuse life into? What are we willing to sacrifice for? And Austin Coppock calls the third decan of Pisces a cup of blood, which it's a Mars ruled decan. So there is a kind of a feeling of, what are we going to give up to be able to pursue that idealized rainbow vision of the 10 of Cups type of enchantment type of deal.
Like there's a raw end of the deal, so to speak.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But, you know, the other thing I might add is that I found this square to be extremely strong in terms of the synchronicities in life. You know, it's really made it real. And I'll give you an example.
Sure.
It's been happening like throughout the whole time, more so than usual. But just before, you know, a couple of nights ago, just before I was preparing for this show, and you'd sent me the link to the last show that you did. I thought I better watch it to see what I'm up for. And so I was watching it, and then something caught my eye. When YouTube like pops up these random things, and it was one of your music videos.
Oh boy.
I was like, oh, what's this? And it was, like a Jeff Buckley thing. Nice. And I was like, oh, I watched it and I was like, oh my God, you are amazing. And, the last song that was playing on my phone was Lilac Wine by Jeff Buckley. And I think I saw, Last Goodbye. And I thought, I just thought, oh my God, you are Hermes with the lyre. And I'm like, Apollo, mesmerized.
Oh, that's awesome.
You are amazing.
Oh, well, now I'm getting flushed here. Like, so thank you. Thank you.
You need to bring music to these shows.
Yeah, I need to re-engage with my music, I think, soon. Yeah, Jeff Buckley was a huge influence on my musical career, and I used to do these tribute shows for Jeff Buckley in Chicago and Toronto and various places, and really resonated with his story and the way that he expressed emotionally. And so thank you,
genius.
Shu. He was a genius.
That was so Mercury and Neptune. I thought the synchronicity, you being Hermes, with the lyre, the Neptune just bringing me to another world, and the fact that I was actually just listening to that album before I decided, oh, hang on, I've got to work. I've got to actually like watch this video and see what these shows are all about. And then it happened to say, no, don't do this. Watch this instead.
Well, so if you're hearing this and you want to check out my music, I do have a YouTube channel, Spencer Michaud Music. So if you're interested in that, there's some stuff on there. But yeah, I've taken a few years of a break, I guess, to really dive into my astrological studies. And I think that eventually there will be like, I don't know how to blend them necessarily, but returning to having that be a bigger part of my life again, I think is going to be hopefully happening, because I miss it. I definitely miss it, especially with I was doing a lot of gigs before COVID hit too. Well, not a lot, but a few little here and there. And hopefully I'll get back to that and share that with the world. So thank you, Shu. You're playing to the Leo ascendant peanut gallery.
Well, it's well deserved, because you are just incredible. I thought, wow, you really, and I always think astrology is best when it's applied to something else. I happen to use art and alchemy and the farm, but it can easily, there's all these verticals that lay underneath the umbrella of astrology, and that's when you get real magic, I think. So
totally. Yeah. And music really is about pattern recognition and tapping into your intuition. And I taught songwriting at a college for a long period of time, and I talked about the sculptor versus the midwife. And both of those things need to be present when you're doing music. You need to open yourself up as a channel to receive the inspiration, and then you use your technique and your skill to be able to communicate it out into the world. And I think astrology is exactly the same. You need to open yourself up as a channel, like that midwife, to receive that oracular message. And then our skill through our study allows us to communicate it in a way that our audience can receive. And the more study we're able to do, maybe the more refined our communication techniques become, right? Our translating ability, our mercurial, communicative abilities.
Yeah, it's being the bridge. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, Mercury, the bridge. I love that. Okay. So also on that day, we have Venus making that opposition with Saturn. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think about it's the flow on from the activation of Mars earlier in July, now being felt in a more heart-centered way. And so we can maybe look at it in terms of, Saturn, Venus, like the coldness, the isolation, the distance that you mentioned before, tensions and relating, but also maybe bringing up the more serious nature around relationships, or maybe decisions around deeper commitments. grown-up stuff to do with relationships.
Yes, definitely like a sobering influence, right? With relationships in general being what's being served up to Saturn to say, okay, you've got to put all your ducks in a row. I think that the other thing I would add to what you're saying is just, I guess, be careful that a sense of, I think that the combination of Venus and in Leo could speak to a little bit of vanity too, and where we are really hyper aware of like how we appear to others, and that could run into some kind of challenge as well. So be careful that you're not pursuing surface, like the look of something versus the essence of it. I think that would be a good way to balance out these things also.
Yeah. And in Joy Usher's book as well, you know, with that Alberuni's table of enmity, it says that Saturn is seeking friendship from Venus. Like that's what it wants to do. Venus doesn't like Saturn, but Saturn wants friendship from Venus. And I can see that as well playing out very strongly in my life as well, with strong Saturn Venus, where like if Saturn is the technical astrology side, you know, it wants something else to bring it to life, like the art or, you know, the herbs and things like that. And so we can see this as a tension, but also as an opportunity to bring some connectedness back to Saturn where it really needs it.
Yeah. I like that. I like
remove the dryness of Saturn.
Well, and seeing that both, you know, thinking about Libra in general, right? When we have the domicile of Venus, but also the exaltation of Saturn. So they do have that connection by that one particular house where they're kind of, you know, both having responsibilities. So I love that, like kind of maybe bringing that artistic vision into some kind of form potentially, right? With Saturnian, concretizing
definitely.
it.
That's right. Yeah.
And that piggybacks off what you were saying about commitment, right? Like maybe we have this love that we have for one another, but what does it mean unless we are making it into something real rather than just an idea, right?
Yeah, that's right. The discipline of a creative pursuit as well. Like if you really want to be that artist, like what's it going to take? You know, what's it going to, what do you have to be disciplined about, you know?
Well, and like Jeff Buckley, you know, he practiced his craft incessantly, right? He was so meticulous, and to be able to learn one of his songs, you couldn't just pick it up and like play it. You had to like spend months with it trying to.
That's why I was so impressed. I was like, holy crap! Like his songs are so complex technically, and and the vocals on top of that. I thought, you know, all these sort of syncopated beats and mishmash of timing and things like that. That's why I was so blown away.
Well, I always compare him to an Olympic singer. And that's a nice segue for what we're going to be talking about a little bit later, I think, is we do have the Olympics that are going to be starting during July. And just think about the type of dedication that it takes to make it to like the height of the Olympic stage. And like Jeff Buckley, the height of like the possibilities of the human voice. I think he really pushed those boundaries through his practice and through his exploration and experimentation. So definitely. I'm checking in with the chat box here. Top Notch Vintage says, talking about the Mars-Uranus square, it could be new tech Mars initiated on the Earth, i.e. switched on. Okay, yeah, I could see that. Corey G says participation of Mars by exact aspect / T-square configuration in the second iteration of Saturn-Uranus is interesting, as the moon rules the sun seems fitting / explosive. Okay, and Corey has these amazing little. I don't think you can see this, Shu, but he has like icons here, like little. I'm jealous of his little icons that he's putting into every comment. He's got all the glyphs for the planets.
Right. Yeah, so that's beyond my technical ability.
All right. And Corey says, happy birthday. Another new perfection year offers a fresh start. Their second exact Saturn return is 7/7 and natal 6th house moon Saturn conjunct in Uranus. Oh, wow. Well, good luck with your second Saturn return. we'll all get through it together, I hope. And then Top Notch Vintage says Elon Musk wanting
Yeah.
the love affair with Venus and
Yeah.
Bitcoin. Right? Yeah. I haven't been keeping up with Bitcoin, but I know the last time I was checking on with that, there was people were concerned, but it changes so quickly that I haven't
Yeah.
even entered that kind of thing.
I don't understand real money either, so Bitcoin's completely out of
Yeah,
my.
there you go. Yeah, yeah. Let us figure out fiat currency first. You know. Like, all right. So let's move a little bit forward here. And here's my birthday. Happy birthday, Spencer. July the 7th. And so I'll be 41 this year. But starting my 6th house perfection year, 2 years of Saturn. You could see that I shaved my head a week or two before my Saturn perfection years start, you know, just kind of leaning into it. And yeah, to me, this is like what Saturn looks like, you know, like just like very real and shorn,
Minimal.
minimalized. Yeah, I feel like you know, maybe subconsciously I feel like I have to shave my head to be a great Hellenistically inspired astrologer, because we got like, you know, Chris Brennan and Achuta both have this style going, you know, so we'll see. All right, so if we look at the 8th, we are going to see the similar action that we saw with Mars, with Venus then taking its turn, making the square to Uranus. Okay, so any nuance shift with the Venus square with Uranus as opposed to the Mars square, Shu?
Well, this is interesting because Venus will be making is Antisha relationship with Uranus. So there's this secret union that they're having together, like something within the backgrounds that can be a bit telling of something that might be going on. And, you know, that could be something like, yes, the breakthrough kind of component of Uranus, but I kind of see it as well as maybe this secret comfort with being a bit different, maybe unconventional relating, you know, where it could be viewed as distance or aloof conventionally, but there's this kind of inner resonance of like, oh no, I'm okay with my relationships being a bit different. I'm okay with, you know, being isolated at home and seeing my friends online kind of thing. You know, there's this kind of secret kind of thing going on between the two of them that I find interesting.
Yeah, I could, you know, one thing that was coming to mind, I could see like, you know, Venus opposite Saturn, maybe there's this serious talk about the state of a relationship potentially.
Yeah, what
And then,
should be.
right, and then you decide as Venus is squaring Uranus with that Antisha, that secret connection, to be that unconventional. Maybe it's like, I don't know, you agree to see other people or something of that nature, or something gets shaken up in the routine of the relationship. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to not be committed. It could be that maybe there's something within your specific relationship where you say, look, this has gotten a little stagnant. This has gotten a little stale. Let's try something new to try to bring that, you know, I don't know, that victory card, right? That 6 of wands type of energy into our relationships and celebrate who we are, even if it's a little weird, right? Nonconformity. And my interest was piqued when you were like, maybe you agree to just see your friends online, because my 12th house sun was like, oh, is that an option? Like,
yeah, it's okay. It's the norm now, so you're right.
I've had this, you know, I've had this built-in excuse to like not have to feel guilty about turning down invitations for the last 16, 15 months. And now I'm kind of getting thrown back into that, you know, energy of like, oh boy, now I have to make these decisions and choices about how social I can be. And, but we'll figure it out, right? I think that there's a way for everyone to find something that they'll be comfortable with. Okay.
That's right.
So that is the 8th.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I'm
no
just
worries.
going to get my phone. Hang on a second.
Sure.
Excuse me. Hang on.
So as Shu is dealing with her technical
sorry about that.
Venus Uranus thing,
Yep.
I was just saying that you got Uranus a little bit there. So looking at July the 9th, we
Yep.
are experiencing a new moon. So we've got this new moon
Mm.
at 18 degrees of Cancer. This one, it is yes, we have an opposition from Pluto, but it's not super close. But one thing I wrote down in my notes is that it's not witnessed by any of the malefics, which I
Okay.
thought was it's probably one of the first lunations in a while, maybe, that we haven't had a witnessing malefic. And we do have some help from Jupiter by whole sign.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What do you think with this new moon here?
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? It's not the
Yeah.
warm fuzzies that you would expect of a new moon in Cancer. I
Yeah.
see this as a continuation of today's full moon that's happening around now, with the Capricorn full moon opposite Pluto,
Yeah.
like the sun opposite Pluto. This is kind of like from that different perspective of, the moon as well being involved. It almost feels like before we start anything, like that it's like an inevitable having to release something. There may be trepidation or paranoia or fears coming out within this lunation cycle, where kind of feeling like you're walking into a dreaded situation, but you're going to do it anyway, and having support to do that.
Do you think that by Saturn and Mars not witnessing, that makes the opposition with Pluto maybe speak a little bit louder potentially?
Yeah, probably, because it's very concentrated, isn't it? I mean, it's got this sort of wide sort of trine to Neptune as well. But yeah, the stark thing about this is Pluto, and this will be, one of the last times that a new moon in Cancer will be opposing Pluto.
Right.
I mean, there will be another one next year, but I think then Pluto moves. So we're getting to the very last stages of Pluto in Capricorn, and we're going to start to see some urgency come about, doing all those restructural type stuff. And every lunation just helps us to make that happen, because it makes it personal.
I'll take it. I as a Cancer Sun and Mercury, having all these lunations opposite Pluto is it's not the funnest thing. Like,
No.
I believe that on the astrology podcast we're calling that Saturn, Pluto, all that energy, the meat grinder.
Yeah.
And I think that I've been getting a face full of that the
Right.
past few years.
Okay.
I'm ready for it to be over. A couple little tiny details that I will toss out there. There is a fixed star called Wasat that this lunation will be conjoining at 18 degrees of Cancer. That is the belt or the waist of Pollux in the constellation of Gemini. And from the research that I did, there was some significations with potentially mastering a skill, but could also be prone to sorrow, because some of the significations with Pollux have to do with Pollux being the immortal twin that had to give something up so that his brother Castor could live again. So I think that plays into the opposition with Pluto, because we've got this, like, I always think of Pluto. I say this on the channel a lot, but I think of Pluto as like the clogged toilet planet. Like, you've got to take a plunger to it and deal with things that have been repressed underneath the surface.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what we're dealing with here, is that, we have to master something, but we have to, there may be something we have to let go of again with this new moon as well.
Yeah. And, since we're getting to the business end of Pluto in Capricorn, and since 25 degrees, it now comes under the bounds of Saturn. So in a way, we're getting this reiteration of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in a similar way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this kind of inevitable purging, or inevitable getting rid of something in order to start it fresh.
Well, and we've seen with Pluto in that decan of Capricorn, a lot of governmental structures having their own repressed corruption exposed and brought to the light of day. and us needing to take a plunger to root out and ferret out this like seedy underbelly of the way that we, I think, of the organization of societies, and the way that we, distribute resources, the way that we distribute power. That's a decan that 36 Faces talks a lot about power structures with that. So, I think we'll see if we've how much we've learned from the past 2 or 3 years, or the past 20 years ish, with Pluto moving through that sign. I believe also that the Pluto is making, I don't know when it becomes exact, but I know that the United States is going through their Pluto return. So a lot of the unrest that we're seeing here in the States, probably you can harken back some of that to Pluto returning to the exact position it was in when the United States was incorporated, in dealing with the challenges of forced labor, of income inequality, of colonialism, and things of that nature. So it's a reckoning of sorts. So we'll see what's going on here. Hopefully we'll make it.
Big stuff.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's keep on moving. Now, we've made it through Cancer 1 or 2. I'm sorry, Cancer 2. And now we're entering into Cancer 3. So on the 11th, we're seeing the sun move into the second decan of Cancer at about 20 degrees of Cancer. Just a few things to break down with that real quick. This is a Moon-Jupiter decan. Austin Coppock calls it the overflowing cup. Hecate is the daimon or deity associated with this decan. Really interesting, with Hecate being a spirit. The Book of Thoth calls it luxury. Now, one of the things that I think of with this decan is we've nurtured something in the first 2 decans of Cancer, and now we have this 4 of Cups type of experience where maybe we've achieved something, we've nurtured something, and we're refusing the excess. I have Mercury in this decan, and I will tell you, my experience has been, and this is something that is talked about in Mr. Coppock's book. I know I refer to it a lot, but it's my favorite book. It's my joy usher on some level.
All right.
But and I think Hecate plays into this thought that the abundance that we receive comes at a price to someone else, and that and I'm thinking about this too, with just piggybacking off of what we were talking about with America and like the abundance that has been built here, but potentially off the backs of forced labor and going into other countries and exploiting other countries' resources to be able to create wealth for our own country. And I've had a hyper awareness of that type of energy since I was very young, and it's a constant struggle. I think thinking about it, I think there's guilt with receiving in this decan. I think it's recognizing that there is in some situations there's only enough to go around, and things need to be distributed fairly. In other situations, there is, the universe is an abundant, unlimited creator. So I think we have to figure out which of those situations we're dealing with. But as far as Hecate goes, do you have any experience with Hecate?
I'm not an expert on Hecate. No, I'm not. There are other people that know much more about Hecate, but it's not a deity that I have worked with in the past.
Yeah, just one thing that was coming up in my mind about Hecate was just her role as a nurturer and a destroyer. And that led me to think about maybe the last decan of Cancer. If we were waxing in the first few decans, this is maybe reflective of the waning phase of the moon, right? Where we're distributing, or we are diminishing on some level. So I think that's something to think about as a canvas painted on this time frame from the 11th of July to the 22nd. So on July 11th, we do have a new planetary ingress. Our friend Hermes moves into Cancer. Okay, what do you think? What do you think about this shift, Shu?
I guess a deepening of awareness, maybe around the emotional tensions, and maybe we feel a bit more, maybe a bit more unable to fully be objective, or having a tendency to be led by our passions, our emotions, and our personal biases, perhaps.
Yeah, we lose that mercurial ability to differentiate, and we're kind of thrown into that almost like oceanic consciousness where, you know, we're not able to think as rationally, and we have to, our communications have to go through 5 to 10 layers of feelings before they can be expressed. And I experience this sometimes too with Mercury in Cancer. Also retrograde in the 12th, which is probably the layers that I have to work through. But again, that could also be something that contributes to like musical consciousness, right? Being able to tap into that, express a feeling. So my thoughts on Mercury in Cancer: expressing what you need to feel supported. I think that it's about having the conversation. Schmidt calls Mercury the destabilizer, throwing things into question. So I think that where I look at Mercury as far as where it's placed as, where are we going to be asking the questions and receiving maybe some new insights about something. So this may lead to you asking questions about, how do you nurture others? How do you receive nurturing? And what is the best way to facilitate that in your life? And now we've got that whole sign opposition with Pluto. So there may be some conversations that bring up some difficult topics around that as well.
Yeah, and the ruler of Mercury will be with, it's with that Leo stellium at the time. So Mercury's not really getting much support there, with its ruler being in an aversion sign, and bringing back all that Saturn-Uranus fixed sign stuff as well, which is again bringing back to the point about the aftermath of June.
Definitely a recovery period. Moving forward one day, we do see a nice aspect once Mercury moves into, oops, that's not a good drawing. When Mercury moves into Cancer, it is moving into, almost right away, this trine with Jupiter. That's interesting. So tell me, what are we going to be experiencing with Mercury and Jupiter coming into a trine here, Shu?
Well, I quite like the look of this, because it gives us a little bit of a mental escape, because it's off axis to all of the fixed sign stuff, and that expansion of mind, pulling us away from the burdens of the little details of life and all these tensions, is a way for us to be able to just mentally escape from it. I feel like this aspect is a saving grace of some of the more stressful times that we'll be having in July. And it could also be a time where we have extraordinary insights and downloads, a good time for learning, mind absorption, that kind of stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, like a little oasis, right? A little beach respite, you know?
Yeah. And we love that, don't we? Maybe it's a good day to dig into a book or something.
Yeah, totally. My family's been bugging me to go to one of the Great Lakes here, so maybe that will be a good time to take a little vacation or something of that nature. Spend some time near the water, and you might get some insights from the depths.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the last, Jupiter will be moving back into Aquarius soon. So it's kind of like one of these last kind of personal aspects of Jupiter that you can really make the most of before it moves back into the hardworking sign of Aquarius, and Saturn ruled sign of Aquarius. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so if we go forward to the 13th, we are seeing one of the other pretty important transits of our month, the Mars-Venus conjunction in the third decan of Leo.
Right, yes, Shu. This is a big one. you could almost do a whole show just on this, because it's the beginning of a new synodic cycle of Venus and Mars. And look, I'm no expert on the Venus-Mars synodic cycle. I haven't been following it long enough to really understand it fully in my life, but it is a very irregular cycle, and it works a little bit like a Saros series, where every 32 years we will get Venus and Mars starting its synodic cycle in close to the 20 degrees of Leo, like it is now. So the next time this will happen is in 1953 or something like that, if my maths is right. And the last cycle that started was in, I think, 2019. It was in Virgo. So we're ending that cycle. And we're starting a new one here on the, is it the 13th or 12th of July? Yeah. So that it's a creative time. By creative, I mean, not art creative, but, tensions that lead to an action, basically, is what I mean by creative, which is what we're seeing a lot in July. So you see, one raw passions collide there, that have to do with your independence, your own personal will, clashing with one's need for connection, one's creative, fertile, graceful ways, and they're both colliding to create something, essentially. We might not see it yet, but we will see it at the squares that Mars and Venus make with each other through their cycles. Now, the interesting thing about this iteration of the synodic cycle is that Venus will be going retrograde in December, January. Right. And Capricorn. So we're actually going to see 3 first squares of this synodic cycle, which makes this cycle slightly longer than the other Venus-Mars synodic cycle. So I think it's an important time to observe that there may be something creative happening around the formation of relationships or the revisiting of existing relationships. Like, I'm thinking renewing of vows, that kind of symbol, like establishing some new dynamics within, like new dynamic patterns within the relationships. And it comes also at a very potent time, because just a couple of days before we have this Venus-Moon conjunction, which is, if you follow the Inanna story, this is the 3rd gate of ascension, which opens up a portal that relates to the solar plexus chakra. Now, that solar plexus chakra has a lot to do with balancing our will and our assertiveness and our self-expression in a way that we can avoid to be, like, say, manipulative or overpowering, but at the same time not also subjugating ourselves or having low self-esteem. So it really brings in this, Pluto sort of feeling of power, balancing power and power dynamics in relationships, and how we're going to create a new relating system going forward that's going to be fair but passionate at the same time.
Yeah, that was actually one of the ways that I got aware of your work, Shu, was you did that story of Inanna with, I believe it was with were you doing heliacal risings of planets or something of that nature?
I did a talk about the evening star phase of Venus. Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And was very impressed by that talk and all the really great, everybody was like, who is this? This is amazing. This is amazing talk. I think I reached out to you after that, and thus began our friendship. But I think that with Venus and Mars, I'm actually really curious to hear even more about that Inanna story with the gates and the chakras. That's really interesting to see that that each gate might coincide with each kind of energetic center in the body as well. That's something I haven't been exposed to before. That's really cool. I'll add some mythology to the mix here. Aphrodite and Ares in the Greek tradition were illicit lovers. And of course, Venus or Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the blacksmith. And Hephaestus caught wind that they had been meeting in secret and made this net, this tiny net of filament, this invisible net that fell on top of them when they were basically when Aphrodite was cheating on her husband, and got caught together. And Hephaestus brought all the Olympian gods and was like, look at my unfaithful wife. And the gods came, but the goddesses refused, right? They weren't going to make a spectacle of this. So some interesting thoughts about maybe this coming together, this passionate energy that is not necessarily orthodox or even above board. Maybe, maybe there's some hidden aspect with it. And the exact aspect is at 19 degrees of Leo. So that is still the very tail end of the Six of Wands, second decan. So trying to come to some sort of victorious authenticity through the combination of these energies, like the receptivity meeting that energetic action. Okay, so you hanging in there? You still good?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess for people in the chat, this could be quite a fundamental turning point in relationships or a significant bookmark. You might not know it yet, but looking back, it will be, I would imagine.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see as well. I just happened to look at my birth chart and I'm like, I wonder what Venus-Mars cycle I was born under. So if you go to your birth chart and go back to the last time Venus and Mars made a conjunction, so you're born under that sign's synodic cycle of this, but where the synodic cycle of this if the sign started. And exactly 9 months to my birthday, previous to my birthday, Venus and Mars made a conjunction. I thought, that's when I was conceived.
Nice. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
For the people out there in digital world, I think that the synodic cycle, just understanding synodic cycles in general, is a real game changer with your astrological practice. I know that when I was starting to get introduced to that concept, being able to trace back the cycle that we are a part of with these aspects was huge and just fundamental. I was like, oh, I can see this in context of its seminal moment, its beginning moment. And when you can trace back these types of, conjunctions and then see it play out through the square and the opposition, it can give you so much context to what that omen is maybe trying to achieve, or what that cycle is, what its birth was trying to come, it was trying to bring to fruition, is what I'm trying to spit out here.
Yeah. So simply looking at the house where Leo is in your chart will give you a big hint as to what the next however long the cycle will end in the beginning of 2023. So that's the creative project that's going on at this from the 13th of July.
Nice. So we have a few comments coming in here. Corey G is using his fancy glyphs to tell us that Mercury is trine Jupiter as the sun applies to a trine with Neptune. Sounds very harmonious, perhaps a too good to be true kind of fantasy world transit. Yeah, I could see that. Anytime Neptune's involved, you could potentially have this beautiful transcendental experience that may not always be completely rooted in the physical world. And that can lead to some challenges sometimes if you're not balanced with that. Lisa is saying Venus, Mars through the 12 houses.
Some secret liaisons, maybe.
Yeah, right. I think what Lisa's asking is for us to break down that through all 12 of the houses.
Oh, right. Okay.
Well, maybe that'll be another video, right? Yeah, someone needs to make that video in their spare time, Lisa says. But again, like Shu said, just look at the Leo area of your chart and look at the topics associated with that. and you're going to get quite a bit of insight just exploring the topics of that particular house. Like in this chart here, in the Aquarius rising chart, this is happening in the 7th house of partnerships, of completions, of the public, relationship with the public, and things like that. So this is, someone with that rising would experience that on some level. I believe I was born during I don't believe, I know I was born during a Venus Mars square. So on my Mercury energy, right? Mercury, Venus.
It makes sense that you're a musician, because it's such a creative, like, it's almost like you're forced to be creative in some sort of way because of the tension that's forming.
Well, and with Gemini and Virgo, I often say that with my Venus and Gemini, I'm like, it's on the fixed star Rigel, which I often compare to, I say this as a running joke on my live streams, that I feel like I'm drinking from the fire hose, and I'll be absorbing lots of information and details, but then Mars and Virgo says what stays and what goes. And you need to cut through all of this stuff and like figure out how you're going to use it. Like, what are you going to do to put it into use and make it practical? And that's always been something I've struggled with too, is how much is too much and how much is not enough, trying to figure those things out. So that's one manifestation of that type of thing.
Yep. All right. And I know you like your book recommendations, but this, I think, is the best book on this is another Australian author, Michelle Finey, and she's written a book called The Sacred Dance of Venus and Mars. And I think she's actually come up with the research to realize that there is a Saros cycle kind of thing happening with Venus and Mars, because it is actually such a unusual orbit that looking at it, just on its own, you'd think there'd be no pattern, but she found that there's a 32-year Saros pattern to do with the Venus.
What is the name of the author? I'm going to put that in the chat box.
Michelle Finey, Finey. Sacred Dance of Venus and Mars. She's an Australian colleague, and I think she's also a psychoanalyst. So it's a great book.
I'm going to go out and get that book
this week.
You know me. Tanya's probably in the chat being like, "Oh God, Shu, you're going to make this huge book order again."
I know, we're bad for each other. We're just going to send each other broke. We need to learn Bitcoin so we can start making some money.
Right, there you go. All right, so just keeping it rolling here. On the 17th, actually, first of all, the 15th, we do see a trine between the Sun and Neptune that Corey was alluding to. Okay, so again, this could be kind of a dreamy type of aspect where we have an awareness of the transcendental, or the awareness of something that we want to maybe escape. I don't know about you, Shu, but I actually experience Neptune. It just saps the life out of me on some level. I tend to be, and maybe this is because I have so many Virgo placements, I tend to be so like, I try to be so like in that physical presence that when I'm, taken to this other world, I'm like, oh, where's my brain? Like, oh, Tadia is calling you a book enabler.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's gosh. Great.
Yeah.
No, I love it when people share sources. That's like the best love language gift type of thing someone could give me, is to suggest a book. Yeah, totally.
Love language, I love it.
Yeah. All right. So just a thought on this trine. I wrote down, since the sun's in that luxurious decan, that you may be experiencing luxury, but it may be illusionary with the trine to Neptune, but perhaps an oasis. Actually, the sun is going to be on the fixed star Pollux at this trine as well. So Pollux is really a fixed star associated with sacrifice and storytelling, but through the darker side of something. Castor tells a story that is more positive and sees the brighter side. Pollux is the storyteller with maybe the more negative. So potentially, my thought is, what are you willing to sacrifice to achieve the dream? What are you willing to give up to achieve that ideal of having enough, of abundance, of luxury? And what is the dark side of that too? What is the downside of pursuing material security? Because there's always, this is something I've learned from my very beginning studies of Taoism. So I can't claim to be an expert, but knowing that when you're pursuing something, you're planting the seed of its opposite on some level, right? And I think that the universe is trying to come into equilibrium and homeostasis. And when you're taking an extreme action, you could be, also facilitating the opposite reaction, the duality, the duality type of reaction. Do you have thoughts on that, Shu, on that type of interplay between light and dark, and that duality dance?
Yeah, I guess, well, because it is a trine, I'm seeing more of the, I guess, positive manifestations of that duality and that sacrifice component, like a willingness to share, or a willingness to show gratitude and compassion and acceptance for those that are, less advantaged and things like that. Also, the idea of intuitive insights really flowing, I think is going to be very strong in what I call week 3 of July, because all of the aspects are really outer transit aspects, outer planet aspects, beg your pardon. And so this week, I think, is really going to be pulling us out of all of the very real world, visceral aftermath cleanup job into this opportunity to see a bigger picture, bigger outer realities at play, gaining insights of stuff that we might not have been aware of, or that might require us to think in a more non-linear way. And this Saturn-Neptune is, helping us to do that, I think.
Yeah. And I like what you say about figuring out how to get in touch with our generosity and our one of the things that is talked about in this decan is, when you are approached with luxury, what do you do with the excess, right? If you have more than enough, how can you share it with others? I think that may be a question that comes up with this trine, is saying, all right, maybe we've cultivated this, this cornucopia of resources, and if you only take what is necessary, and if you have more than you need, like, keep it flowing, because when you block the flow, then it stops coming in too. Like, you have to recycle that energy. I can't help but notice, though, that we are also going to be seeing the sun making an application by opposition to Pluto. Which is the same journey that Venus did recently, moving from the trine to Neptune to the opposition to Pluto. So going through a similar type of experience here.
And I see this more as, from that new moon in Cancer that was coming to oppose Pluto. I see this as a continuation, except with only the sun being involved now, we have, I guess, more awareness or consciousness around what our fears were at the new moon, what our trepidation was, like what this dread was all about. We get to see it now, for the first time, in this cycle. So, and maybe this might look like the consciousness of these power dynamics that are at play within our relationships, our boundaries, our power and control and things like that.
I like that. I like the power dynamics. I think that's something that is definitely, when we see the sun and Pluto getting together, there can be some power challenges, and strangely enough, themes of abduction. Like, I remember there was a sun Pluto opposition. I don't know if this was in the middle of last year when all the stuff was going down in Portland. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but in America, I don't know if this was the middle of last summer or 2 summers ago. I can't completely remember, but there were protesters in Portland that it started disappearing into vans that were unmarked, that were working for the Department, I think, of Homeland Security or something like that. And literally people were just disappearing off the street. And this news story came out right as the sun was opposing Pluto. And in the Greek myths, Hades, Pluto, would erupt from the underworld and steal Persephone down into the underworld. And just this eruption from nowhere, and this, like, kind of abduction energy. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something of that nature coming out into the open. I think that, I had one more thought on this before my brain melts away.
I know it's late. It's what time is it over there?
It's about eight.
Oh, that's not too bad.
It's not too bad. No. Yeah. Well, anyway, I think that's what I've got for that.
It's been abducted, that thought.
Yeah, I just think that be careful about getting into power struggles, and that, fight fair. I think that the sun, anytime the sun makes contact with Pluto, it's shining an awareness on some issue that has fallen into either disrepair or been thrust underground. And it is going to be brought to awareness and consciousness. So I think that's something to think about with that.
Yeah, seeing something about yourself that you might not like.
Yeah, and you know what else is going on this day that we were experiencing here that I didn't even really break down, is that's our last quarter moon too. Is that 16th and 17th is the square between.
Lots of processing.
Yeah, where our inner equilibrium could be disturbed a little bit by these types of choices that we're being forced to make, and these power struggle dynamics. I'm also realizing like, that this is the exact day that I'm going to be giving a talk for the Nightlight Astrology Summer Speaker Series.
Yes. Yay, I'm so excited for that.
So I don't know if that's been announced on this channel yet, but I'm giving a talk on the decans and incorporating them into your astrological practice, and that'll be July the 17th at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, American. And there is a link in my Instagram feed for registering, or you go to Nightlight Astrology, click on their Summer Speaker Series and register. It is free to attend, so hopefully all of you will come out and support and take advantage of that. And so we'll see how that manifests with the Sun Pluto opposition.
I know, that looks very interesting. Don't be too. Be nice in the chat.
Be kind to us. Like, I did choose the Libra moon to do it rather than the Scorpio moon the next day, so maybe that'll be slightly. I don't know if that was a good choice or not now in retrospect, but we'll see. Okay, so let's keep on moving. Keep on moving. All right. Now, if we go to the 18th, something very fascinating happens. We have Mercury making its morning set, where Mercury is going underneath the sun's beams. I believe that is considered a phasis condition, an omen that is speaking loudly. And you've done some work on these synodic cycles and heliacal risings and settings. So tell us a little bit more about Mercury going under the sun's beams, especially the direct phase, because I'm trying to parse out retrograde under the beams versus direct under the beams. So help me out here, Shu.
Right. Well, anytime we have a planet making that set, it's almost like we're starting to head into the underworld in a way, so again, a deepening of our thoughts, for that actual day, it's a very loud Mercury day, but a day in which we experience Mercury from an internalized perspective, that going within kind of archetype will be at play that day. And it takes, it'll take a while for it to sort of come back into the cazimi with the sun, in which it will be another significant point. But at this point, well, firstly, currently we're seeing a Mercury direct. So we're seeing whatever insights that we gained from the last cazimi in June get momentum. You know, all of a sudden things are speeding up where we're dealing with our projects and our thoughts, whatever that was started then, coming out into the world and being manifested and moving forward in some sort of way. And then we're seeing that roll out until we get to almost the end of, what date are we, mid-July, where Mercury then comes back into its set. And this is when we can start to see some challenges and problems start to manifest with whatever that project was. Not the full-blown problems yet, but, you know, we're starting to get tired, you know, Mercury going into the beings. Yeah. We're starting to feel a bit overpowered by it all. Maybe, fatigue, overpowered, like a person really starting to lose strength. Yeah. And it's now applying to the sun. It's seeking a union. It's seeking inspiration at this stage to keep it going. So yeah, it could look like mental fatigue. It could look like somewhat of a feeling a bit disconnected with what our purpose was, being thrown a little bit off guard.
Well, Mercury is moving super fast at this point too. When Mercury is in direct motion, it's moving really fast, versus the retrograde when it's moving a lot slower. So like you were saying, like the speeding up of those significations that we are seeing from the last cycle. Here's one interesting thing I'll toss out there, and I don't know if we have to spend a ton of time on it, but Gary Caton, are you familiar with Gary Caton's work?
Yeah.
Yeah, he talks about, so we've got Mercury as a psychopomp when it is retrograde and under the beams going into the underworld. And he tossed out this thought of maybe Mercury is returning either to or from Olympus when it is direct and going into the realm of the gods and bringing something back to the earth versus going into the underworld and coming back. So that's something I've been trying to meditate on and you know, see how that might manifest differently, like the chthonic depths versus the celestial highs potentially, right?
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. He's the Hermes guy, man. Wow, his book is incredible too.
He's amazing. And he told of a really amazing, I think he learnt this off Demetra George, where at the Mercury cazimi at the beginning of the Mercury cycle, when it's retrograde and cazimi, to do some kind of a simple ritual Where you block your ears up at the time. Have you heard about this?
No.
Okay, you block your ears up and you do a meditation, ask for a message, and then you say to yourself, okay, when I, get to this point, or when I get to town, or the first person I see, whatever that first message is that you hear is like an oracular message. So, and it could be someone else's conversation, it could be something you hear on the radio, whatever it is, but when you unblock your ears, that first message is that oracular message.
And do you have to perpetuate Hermes or anything like that? Like say an invocation, or what is the...
you can if you like. Yeah, you can if you like. You can, it's up to you what you do. But I just thought that was a cool thing to do. And I actually did it.
Oh, did it work?
Did it. Yeah, so because of where I live, there's not many people around. So I kind of said, well, the next time I'm out in public and in town, I will, listen for the first message. So I actually went out for dinner that night, and I consciously said, okay, from now on, that first message I hear from now, it will be it. And then I overheard the person on the next table next to me, and he said, what was it? Oh yeah, they're big changes. And I'm like, oh my God, no. What is it?
So you avoided doing like earmuffs in public though, right? I can just imagine Shu out to dinner with her family and just be like, la 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 la, do.
Oh gosh. Oh yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, but I did, and I also won 2 raffle prizes that night at the pub.
Nice.
I must say. Yeah, 2 gin and tonics and a vegetable hamper. So I'm very pleased with her.
Yeah, Tanya is saying that she loves freestyle divination. Like, that should be a new competitive sport, right? Freestyle. That's pretty much what I do on this channel is freestyle divination. You know, at some level, integrative. I like to call it integrative, practical. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a little experimental sometimes, but all right. Yeah. So yes, that is. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that. Everybody out in the,
I recommend
the audience, just plug your ears up, you know, or give yourself the 10-second countdown and hear the next message, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah.
All right, so we're looking at the 20th here, and we've got just a minor aspect, a sextile between Venus and Uranus to close out the Sun in Cancer. I think that is the final aspect during that solar placement. So maybe we'll get some kind of flash of insight. You know, if you put your hands over your ears and, you know, propitiate Hermes, you will get a beneficial oracular message that will shake you out of your routines. And
hear it in some music, maybe. You might hear a message in a song or something like that.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time. Like I think my version of what you were talking about is the first song when I get in my car and turn on the radio is always speaking to me, or the first song of the day, because I put music on when I do exercise in the morning, and it's bar none. There's just like something in there that's like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Thanks, universe. Like I get it.
Yeah. Just don't listen to techno then if you're going to do that.
right, totally. You're gonna grind your day away. Like, oh boy.
Oh god.
So I'm flipping the page here to page 2. Oh geez. Oh my god. I'm gonna have to go a little quicker through this, but we're moving now into the Sun in Leo. Actually, we missed one thing on the 21st before. Actually, I'm wrong. That there was one more thing before the Sun moved into Leo. Right here, we have an ingress of Venus into Virgo, which is not a happy place for Venus. It's not its happiest place.
No, she's going to have to roll up her sleeves and do some work.
Get to work, Venus. The time for play and luxury is over. It's time to learn a new skill. It's time to gather the support of your community, because you do have triplicity dignity by the daytime. And you might be starting from the bottom of the Wheel of Fortune, but you just got to work your way up, right?
Yep.
All right.
Don't worry about the hair and the dress. Just just get on with it.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so now let's move to Leo season here on the 22nd. And so the Sun gains a messa dignity as we move into Leo, with it being in its own domicile. It is also in its own triplicity as the fire sign ruler by the day. But Shu, what are the elephants in the room now with the Sun moving into Leo?
Well, we've got this Venus opposite Jupiter just before that. And whilst that seems nice, I always think, with especially with an opposition aspect, that there could be too much of a good thing. You know, especially with Venus now being in Virgo, it wants to remember the good times and the high life, but it somehow is seeing the enormity of the task at hand. And so we really need to be exercising some moderation at this stage, and maybe finding a good channel to be of service, to spread our goodwill, find a purpose and a service for that Venus opposite Jupiter. Otherwise, it can look like being overwhelmed or just going out of control with the desires and the needs and the demands.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm thinking about, you know, the grind, the versus the journey too, like with Venus in the first decan of Virgo, we have a 8 of Pentacles type of experience where we're toiling away the day. And that is opposed by that 8 of Cups energy, where we're leaving the work behind and going off into the wilderness to search for meaning and search for unification of purpose. The other thing that I was seeing here, well, actually, one more note on Venus, Jupiter here. One word that comes up for me often with Virgo is disgust, and we have like acceptance, like almost universal acceptance with this Pisces Jupiter energy, this ordering. And Mercury, my experience of Virgo and the Mercury's role there is to say, ew, that smells bad. I need to get rid of it so that I can store what is actually valuable for the winter, right? So it's both the disgust to be able to notice the flaws, but also the appreciation of quality. So it's both simultaneously, like Mercury is apt to do, have that ambiguity. There is that ability to both appreciate quality and to be able to have a strong aversion to things that are out of place. And I find this with my own, I guess you could call it a stellium. 3 planets is considered a stellium, not 4, right? I have a Virgo stellium, and that impulse in me is very strong. Like I'm hyper aware of the flaws in things, and I'm kind of like, oh, I gotta work on that. But I think
it's
that's
discernment. I think.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
That's definitely a much
nicer
gentler way to say it. Where's your Venus? Because like you have ways of like shifting these.
I have Venus on the ascendant, actually.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. Okay, so you're always given that beautiful, harmonious take on it.
But it's retrograde. Retrograde, so yeah. Okay. But yeah, it's that discernment. And I think also with that Virgo energy, it's ego denial. You know, it's like having too much of a good time in Leo, and now you have to atone for it when you get to Virgo.
The reaction.
And we deny ourselves and our spirit, and we're pushing ourselves down a lot, which Virgo types can do.
Oh, I've been there. I've been trying to push down the amount of calories I eat every day because I think I was starting to eat a little too much. And when you turn 40, you can't eat the same way that you did before. And I'm a Cancer and I have a Taurus moon, so I love to eat. And Tanya's a great chef, so I've had to. She makes very rich food, and I have to kind of be like, oh, I can't eat that much. It's so delicious. Stop tempting me, temptress.
Oh, I'm sensing a bit of a midlife crisis coming up.
A little bit. And I promised, I think I have to promise Tanya in these, when she joins these live chats, that I won't air too many of our personal grievances. No, it's not a grievance. She's wonderful, and she's totally on board. She puts up with my like need to have data constantly. Like I love budgeting, and I love like calorie counting, and now I'm like, yay, I get to do. I'm annoying.
Oh my God.
She's a saint for putting up with me. A comment that I had, a question here from Corey saying, is Mercury's most preferred / auspicious position when Mercury is exactly 15 degrees away from the sun?
I think the risings, yes. I think the heliacal rising, we're seeing a heliacal setting, but when it rises on the other side, they're real. I like those, and I'm biased. I'm born with the Mercury heliacal rising. And there's a difference between whether it rises on the morning star or an evening star. So when it rises 15 degrees on the morning star side, we just see this in the native, a real strong need to get a message out there, and they'll do it in a very external way, be it very chatty, really insistent on getting across their message, that kind of thing. But when you see it on the evening star side, we see more of the sages and the wisdom keepers and people that are still strong on getting a message out, but there's this kind of deep knowledge that they're trying to get a message out about.
Yeah, and definitely Mercury coming out of the beams is more auspicious, I think, than it going into the beams, because it, you know, I've heard it compared to someone rising from their sick bed versus going and feeling ill, like you were saying earlier in the show. I would say that there may be also another place where Mercury is probably pretty strong at the maximum elongation too, when it's furthest away from the sun. So that's another contender for the Mercury's preferred position. If you're speaking strictly by essential dignity, at 15 degrees of Virgo, Mercury is at its maximum degree of exaltation. So just by zodiacal sign, that would be the point. I think that Mercury would be like, yay, I get to do all the Mercury things, you know? But I don't know if that was the synodic cycle question or a dignity question. Okay. Yeah, Corey says, I've got Mercury at 28 degrees Libra and the sun at 13 Libra, so evening star, but I'm a night chart. Yeah, so you've got it at the Phasis moment, Corey, and I don't know exactly if it's going into the beams or coming out, but I guess that would be something we'd have to look at your chart. But okay. Oh, the other thing about Mercury and that opposition with Jupiter at that point is Venus is going to be on Regulus at that point as well.
That's right.
Okay. A really important fixed star. Now Regulus is at about 0-ish degrees Virgo, and this opposition is happening with Venus on Regulus. So, you know, they talk about this nemesis that you need to avoid with Regulus placements. Is Regulus is really a pursuit of power and trying to avoid pettiness or revenge or you know, pursuing power at all costs, or you will experience quite a downfall. Regulus can give great strength and great power and great notoriety. And maybe it's shifted a little bit now that it is in Virgo. I bet it's more about humility and power coming through skill versus just, you know, assertion. But that's something to keep in mind with Venus and opposite Jupiter here. It's kind of Jupiter's last gasp too before it's backing its way out of Pisces. Right.
Interesting.
So let's move forward one more day, because what we are doing is we are building to a full moon. And we've got a few more things. Are you doing okay on time, Shu?
Yep, I'm all good.
Okay. So we've got a full moon on July the 23rd at 1 degree of Aquarius and of Leo, in opposition between the sun and the moon. The moon will be on that fixed star Altair, which is the eagle that Zeus turned into to steal Ganymede, the cupbearer, up into Olympus. So, speaking of Olympus, the Olympics are set to start on this day. What an interesting thing that the world's attention will be brought towards. And I wanted to show you, Shu, before we break this down, some cards with this, because I thought it was just really interesting. We've got the first decan of Leo is associated or syncretized with the 5 of Wands, which shows youths in a competition, in a battle, in a mock battle.
Wow, amazing.
Okay? And then we have the moon here in the first decan of Aquarius, where we have conflict. It's called conflict and defeat. So in this battle, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. There's going to be the height of someone's dream coming true, and someone basically having their lifelong hope dashed. You know, only a certain amount of people can win the gold medal at the Olympics, and even if you come in second, you've I don't know, you haven't really lost, because just being there is a victory. I think. I'm trying to remember, Shu, did you tell me that you did sports growing up? Were you an athlete?
I did. Oh God, you wouldn't think it now, would you? Because I'm so unfit now. My body can barely move. But I was I did play competitive sports when I was younger. I was a state netballer, and that was my life. As far as I was concerned, I was going to play for Australia.
Yeah, right.
But I never got there. I stopped growing, and that was my problem. And I kept getting injured on court because I was becoming smaller and smaller. But yeah, so I understand that drive and that challenge of an athlete, you know, but it can,
That's a secret. I don't know how much of a secret it is, but it's a secret part of my experience too. Is I love sports. I love competition. I'm very competitive actually, and I did.
Really?
I played basketball and I played hockey for a long time, and baseball. So baseball, hockey, and basketball. And um,
Wow,
man,
you are so well-rounded, aren't you?
oh,
Sports,
that was my
music,
goal.
astrology.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
goal. I wanted to be a polymath or a Renaissance man, right? I wanted to be like
Yeah.
modern Da Vinci or whatever it was.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Yeah, well, yeah. I kind of found partying and that was the end of my career.
yeah, I had some significant knee injuries that
Yeah.
derailed some of my athletic stuff. I tore my ACL at one point, and that was a big shift. But I think that the competition aspect of this full moon, of I think of nations coming together with the moon conjoining Saturn and Aquarius with this universality, but to come
Mm,
together to compete. I think
mm,
a lot of times when we have lunations, full moons, we have the essence, the spiritual um, drive of the sun coming into a body, into the moon, and coming into a flowering. And we're seeing
mm,
like the competitive aspect coming out in this joining of nations. I've always thought that I love the Olympics. I love it with an intense passion, because it speaks to a number of things that I love. I love competition. I love sports, and I find I have Neptune in the fifth house, so I find transcendence through like
yeah.
entertainment and joy and sporting events and stuff like that. And I love the coming together and putting down your like your guns and your swords to like play a game, and just
Mm,
the novelty of seeing all these different people from all these different nations coming together. I think it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And
mm,
I'm just
mhm.
parked in front of the TV when the Olympics are on. So that's why you'll find me from July the 23rd to like August the 8th or 9th or however long it goes. Um,
No
so
Spencer Michaud YouTube videos at that stage.
well, and I'll say too, like my daughter recently got into competitive swimming for a few years, and I saw she swam against people who qualified for the Olympics, like in the
Wow.
recent United States trials, and I saw how hard it was, just the levels that you have to go through, the work that you have to go through just to get even just to audition to be in the Olympics you have to be
Mm,
an incredible freak of nature athlete
yeah,
to be able to do that. So I
yeah,
have so much respect for the people that are there and the dreams that they are living out. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so I'm
Have you seen the Michael Jordan documentary on Netflix?
yes, it was
Oh my
awesome,
God.
so good. The
He's
Last Dance.
incredible. Oh, I could watch that over and over again.
I
Just
love Michael Jordan. I really
so
do.
do I.
He's
He's an
he's a
amazing guy.
total asshole, but he is like the most amazing like competitor ever. You could tell he is a total jerk too. Sorry,
Well,
like
do you think so? Or did he's very Saturnian to me? I just
yeah,
I
oh
saw him
yeah,
as very Saturnian.
yeah.
You know, he
I think it's both. I think that
mm,
he has the moon on Antares. Um, so
mm,
he's super intense, and he's got Saturn in Aquarius conjunct his sun, and
right.
he's a Cancer rising with his rising is on Sirius. So like he's got major fixed star action in his chart, and Jupiter's in Pisces right on his midheaven in the
Right.
ninth. So he was this larger than life, Zeus like figure. He literally
Yeah.
floated on air.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that he was both a difficult person to work with, but also he was like that because he was so driven, and I have nothing but
Mm,
respect for that. You know what I'm saying? Like
mm,
that
mm-hmm.
he just tried to continually push himself and others to the height of achievement.
Yes.
But I will
And you
say
know,
that
he always came through with the
yeah,
with the final plays or whatever. So he
totally.
really did walk the talk as much as he was nasty to his teammates and all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. You
Right. I
know,
mean,
he delivered.
and again, I think that what we have to realize with these Olympic athletes and people like Michael Jordan is they are sacrificing something to get where they're going. And maybe it's they're sacrificing a normal social life. In Michael Jordan's case, he was sacrificing anonymity. You know, he couldn't go anywhere without an entourage of security or something like that. And that's always something that's been in the back of my mind about music, and like with Jeff Buckley, and like, do you get VH1 in Australia? Do you remember that channel?
I don't even have a TV, so I can't tell you.
So VH1 is basically like MTV. All right. It's like,
okay.
it was a music video channel in America. And they used to have these things called Behind the Music. And it was like these stories of the rise to fame and then the fall from grace. So,
yeah, right. Yeah.
So there was like that narrative that was coming in, but really interesting stories. And I think with this full moon, we're really going to see the balance between the self and the other, the selected few versus the exile, or those who are cast into exile. And I would say one of the other things to keep in mind when the sun's in Leo is it's going to be co-present with Mars and opposing Saturn by whole sign. So instead of witnessing the benefic planets, it's losing the support of both benefics, of Jupiter and of Venus. And it is witnessing both Saturn and Mars. So to me, this movement into Leo, you know, it's bringing this more, I don't know, this harder experience, this more challenging experience, right?
Yeah, but that's such a good manifestation of the Olympics, right? Where we really have to push ourselves and work really hard. Well, we don't, but they do. But, you know, we can watch them do it. Yeah. And this full moon as well is we're going to have 2 full moons in Aquarius this year, which I always find is a telling thing. Then the first one, it happens at the 1st degree of Aquarius, and then the next one next month happens at the 29th degree, so the bookending of Aquarius. But it is the blossoming of that new moon in Aquarius 6 months ago in February, when we had all that whole big stellium of stuff in February. Do you remember that? There was this collusion of planets that happened, all resetting a new synodic cycle. It was such a resetting kind of time. And so this is where we get 2 chances to see the manifestation of that, the blossoming of that. And I had in my notes that this is a time to really take time to reflect on maybe what you've achieved since then, some of your successes. You know, give that sun a good pat on the back, because if you look back, yes, it's been, you know, a tough year, but, you know, maybe you've come further than you thought you had, you know. So
yeah, it's a chapter marker check-in, a progress report for the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah, and the fact that we've got 2 full moons in Aquarius, it sort of drives in that message of, like, you know, look, you've got 2 chances to manifest something. You've got 2 chances to bring this, you know, bring this home in a way.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, so an interesting full moon. The next day that we have here, we have a Mercury Neptune, another Mercury Neptune, right? No, Neptune trine. Okay, that was like, what the like, that's what it is. I knew I wrote it down, but okay. So there is Mercury Neptune trine. So they're working together now. This harmonious interplay between the winged messenger and the Lord of Horses in the ocean. Okay. All right. So let's in addition to that trine, we're going to be seeing Mercury applying to an opposition to Pluto. So again, we're going to be going through that dance that these other planets have gone through, where they first make the trine to Neptune, and then they have to deal with the opposition to Pluto. So where we could be seeing the possibilities of the transcendent beauty, but then we have to deal with the seedy underbelly of that, the reality check with that on some level too. So
yeah.
Any Mercury Pluto opposition thoughts?
Well, I don't think these will be familiar transits, I think, because the sun's just been through the similar journey. But, you know, it's just this idea of the bridge, you know, connecting the inner and the outer world, and having some kind of illumination around, you know, our shadows.
Right. Totally.
Also, that that Mercury Pluto I always find is a good time to have mental stamina and concentration, where you can really delve deeply into something, or it could be like really being obsessed about getting to the bottom of something, problem solving. So just watch you don't become too neurotic or paranoid about it, but it's a good time to really nut something out that day.
Yeah, it's an investigative aspect where you can really become your own Magnum PI, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next day, well, not the next day, but the 28th, we have a big event where our good friend Jupiter is backtracking back into Aquarius. All right, Shu, what are we dealing with here?
Sayonara, graceful, kind of benevolent hand of God, you know. I just see this as, you know, firstly revisiting that period from, you know, whatever, January to May that we're heading back into. But I just have in my mind that things have been flowing. I can't say Jupiter in Pisces has been like amazing, but what I have noticed is that you can wing things a little bit more and things just work out. You're like, oh yeah, she'll be right, we'll be fine, you know, and then things work out. But I don't think we're going to be able to have that luxury when Jupiter goes back into Aquarius. We're going to have to be more prepared, get things in order. We're not going to be able to head out and go, oh, she'll be right, you know, it'll be fine, you know, things will just work out. Things just won't work out as nicely as what they have been, which is, I think,
longer term. You got to take the longer term view and play by Saturn's rules, right?
Yeah,
and
have
I'm
the
noticing,
discipline.
totally. And I'm noticing that right as Jupiter regresses back into Aquarius, it's making an exact opposition to Mars. Like it's like, oh, here you're backing right into it, and you're gonna have to deal with something pretty intense. One thing that I was looking at with this was the Seven of Wands and the Seven of Swords, and those two cards really speak to standing your ground versus leaving your territory behind. Okay, so we've got fighting for your to maintain your position with Mars in the third decan of Leo, and being willing to leave something behind. And you know what? You know what I think would actually work better with this? I think Jupiter is basically saying, hey, review what you've left behind, and can you make a harmonious parting from the past so that you can just move on with your life? You know, because I mean, Jupiter is facilitating harmonious severing of ties, you know, of leaving the past behind. So I think that if you're fighting too hard to maintain your position, if it's based on something in the past, you might want to rethink that and to relieve some of that tension. The other thing that I'm noticing on this day is that Venus is exactly squared the nodes, which is a condition called at the bends. Do you have any experience with the bending of the nodes?
Yeah, well, when I see that in natal charts, I always, whatever planet that's at the bendings, I just think the life is around core decisions around that planet's signification. So this is a time where we're making decisions about the way we connect to people, the way we unite and attract what we want in life. You know, it's these big turning points, big decision making, existential questions around, you know, who it is that we want to connect with, to associate with, to have pleasure with, that kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah, I agree 100%. Choices for sure. A crossroads of sorts where you can see which direction you're going. And Venus is going to start heading towards that south node. So maybe even a decision to leave behind certain beliefs that may be limiting. Because you've got that kind of that drain energy of the south node, right? That portal of form leaving the material plane. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So just one more thing about Jupiter in going back into Aquarius. It's almost, and just harping on what you said about testing things. the dreams that we've had in Jupiter and Pisces is now going to be, we have to put the reality tests on it when it gets to Aquarius. We've got to pressure test them to make sure they're going to work out when we revisit them in 6 months' time. So that's another thing that I saw with Jupiter and Aquarius.
Yeah, because this little toe in the water that we've had with Jupiter and Pisces was like, okay, here's the dream. Can you imagine the possibilities? And now Jupiter is like saying, okay, what are you going to do to make that dream a reality when Jupiter moves back into Pisces in December? Because you'll have 5 months between the end of December and May to like full force, all systems go. Because Jupiter's only going to be in Pisces for like what, 5 months, and then
it's fast.
It's really fast.
It's a shame.
It is, because it's a nice aspect. Okay. Let's see. The 29th, we'd see a ingress with Mars into Virgo. I think this will actually be kind of nice, because this is just going to alleviate the tension finally between Saturn and whatnot. I'm actually looking forward to that. I think that'll just get things out of this tense aspect.
The heat.
Yeah. To me, this is like, okay, you've gone through the battles, you've gone through figuring out, who you are and your authenticity versus how you fit into your community. Now it's time to get to work. This Mars and Virgo is like, all right, enough, posturing. It's time to just like, get to it. Put your nose to the grindstone. Get ready to get it done. And then the last quarter moon happens on the 31st. Okay, so that's here with the square between the sun and the moon in Taurus and in Leo. Any thoughts on what that could be that we're dealing with there? We've got the Kazemi coming up on the 1st of August too. So that might
it just kind of harks back to all of this Saturn-Uranus stuff, really, doesn't it? But with the last quarter moon phase, it's really about turning it back, processing things, starting to think about a succession. So it is about releasing and consolidating. So it almost feels like this whole aftermath that we've been through, we can get to a stage maybe where we're like, okay, let's just cool off a little bit. Mars is now in Leo. Let's just start to consolidate and look for where the real service actually lies.
Service, definitely. How can you serve? Lisa says, less water, more air, Mars at the final degree of Leo. I wonder if there will be any parting fire-like gifts from Mars. I hope not. But I wouldn't be surprised.
That's one thing I noticed too, this Jupiter opposition to Mars is at that energetic degree. So we may see some maybe very drastic, rash decisions and actions being taken, so just be cautious.
Try not to overdo it. I have a feeling maybe this Olympics, I don't wish this on people, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some top level athletes maybe pushing themselves too hard and getting injured potentially with that aspect. So but I don't know. I don't know what other choice they have. They're at the pinnacle of their experience.
Exactly. So, no better time to do it.
Yeah, right. So I wish them good health. I don't wish them any ill will, but I guess for us mortals out there, marshal your energy so that you're not overdoing something that could lead to an injury or something of that nature.
Yeah. Do you want to hear what Maternus says about that Mars opposition to Jupiter?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so caveat, this is, just read this symbolically. It's not, not to be taken too seriously, but an unevenness of life, and inequality and scattering of personal assets. So that could be leading to the loss of personal wealth, makes friends into enemies. and the greatest dangers caused by boisterous associations or by rash actions. So I think that's probably more pertinent. Yeah.
Rash actions. Totally.
Yeah.
So be nice to your friends. Don't get into any ego battles with them.
That's right.
Practice kindness, right? Kindness, kill them with kindness.
Yeah, I think if you can find something useful for Mars to do, it's going to be occupied enough with something Virgoan task. Yeah.
All right, Shu, I think we made it through the month here. I think we did it. What a marathon. I'm drawing on the screen an I-Ching reading that I did for this, and we'll break this down quickly. Lee says hi from Toronto. Hello, Lee. Nice to see you.
Hello.
We're still getting some things in the chat. I got the hexagram number 1, and it was moving to hexagram number 50 with 2 changing lines. And some of the keywords that I have for the hexagram 1, first of all, it's double heaven. So it's this very creative yang energy, this very active principle, dynamic, active, creative, dynamic force, assertion, strength, decisiveness, strong action, going forward, undertaking something. So we probably have this, like going back to the beginning where I said we are this loaded spring, like this catapult, right? Like the grasshopper loading up to make a giant leap forward. But the first changing line is this. It says the dragon is submerged. They associate this hexagram with dragons. It says the dragon is submerged, do not act. So I think that this opposition with Mars and Saturn is saying, hey, there's something that is slowing you down before you can take that giant leap forward. The time's not necessarily right for action. There's a situation that is unclear. There's some abilities that you may have something that goes unrecognized. And this is, I think, painful about the Mars opposition with Saturn is, you really are fighting for that recognition, that, awareness of the hard work, the grind that you've gone through, but something is keeping it below the surface for now.
But amazing. That fits in with that whole idea of the stalemate, like being locked horns, and the frustration to do with that.
Totally. And so there's a nice translation I like that asks questions. This is, I can't remember the author right now, but they ask, how can you liberate the creative energy? What wants to be created? So be patient, have faith, keep a low profile for the beginning of the month. Okay. Prepare things behind the scenes. This is what I love about the I-Ching is, even if you're experiencing a twist of fortune, their advice is to prepare for the return of good fortune, the return of the light. Gather information, gather skills, load your spring is a note that I wrote down. And there's another changing line. It says, the dragon flies high into the sky. It is beneficial to see the great person. So this is where our moment is going to come after we get past these oppositions, to act as a role model for others, to act after clarity. We need to do something noble. We need to do something that has value, that is worthy of our energy and of whatever we're going to pour our resources and our skills and talents into. So great achievements can be achieved with integrity, and you can be catapulted like the grasshopper into a new awareness. Now I want to bring the grasshopper into this, Shu. Grasshoppers are really fascinating creatures, and I'll stop my share for a second. So grasshoppers they can eat 16 times their weight in a day. There are over 11,000 species of grasshoppers. So there are many different ways for them to achieve their purposes, very many unique ways. They can jump 20 times their body length, 20 times. So think of a unique way to express yourself. It doesn't have to be orthodox. There could potentially be a huge leap forward into a new situation after you've laid low and loaded your spring, after you've accepted that there's going to be some delay potentially. And then gather strength and leap away from danger too. If you find yourself in a difficult situation, hop like a grasshopper into the new reality. Leave the past behind, right? Go on that Saturnian second decan 6 of Swords journey where you're crossing the river from the past into your future. You know?
Yeah. And they come out at spring as well, don't they? So it's this idea of that new renewal and the rebirth.
Totally.
Mm.
So
anyway, we did it.
We did it! Yay! Yay!
Oh gosh.
This is fun. My gosh, Shu, I could talk to you for hours. This is great.
I know, right? Hopefully everyone's still with us. They're probably
Yeah.
not.
Oh yeah, we've got people still hanging out in the chat here. Well, I want to say thank you, Shu, for your time, for your energy, for your wisdom. Any final thoughts you have for our audience today?
Just keep following the cycles, keep following the stars. That's, yeah. And keep tuning in to this channel. It's got lots of good stuff here. So
we'll have to do this again. I hope you'll be amenable to such a thing.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where can we find you, Shu? And what you have anything in the hopper coming up? The hopper, the grasshopper?
Yeah. I've got a few things coming up, actually. I'm presenting at a festival called Essence at the end of July, and that's like a festival on magic, shamanism, and ritual. So I'll be doing a little talk around the importance of timing and rituals. I've got a solar return program coming up, a 4-week solar return program coming up with Radiant Astrology. And I'll be doing a talk and a webinar with Kepler in September on the Venus cycle. So there's a few things that I've got to load those springs up with. So yeah.
And
but you can find me on my Instagram or website, but I think that'll probably, will that be in the link or?
Yeah. So I'm going to put it in the chat box here. Tell me your
Intercycle with a PSY.
Astrology.com.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. So you can find Shu at intercycleastrology.com. And also, I believe that's your Instagram handle as well, Intercycle Astrology on Instagram. With
Intercycle _ Yeah.
Underscore.
That's right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who came here today. If you are enjoying this channel, the first thing that you could do is hit that like button. That helps us get out to more people and spread the glory and the beauty of astrology out to all corners of the world. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to make a material donation to the work that I do here, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com or reach out to book a reading. And Shu and myself both do readings. So support your local astrologer and let us divine the stars for you. We can have more food and you can have more energy and like wisdom and things of that nature. So we are more than happy to be of service of you, to you. Tanya says, so much good stuff. Looking forward to more. Shu. Yeah, I am too.
Thanks,
really appreciate this, Shu. This was super, super fun. I have a total, it's a love fest in this house for your work and for just your wisdom. And again, I am in your debt. Thank you.
Oh, it was my absolute pleasure. And thanks, Tanya, for those lovely comments too. So thank you so much.
And I'm looking forward to visiting the farm someday. Okay, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we should try and run a retreat here, I reckon, at some stage. Let's definitely put that in the grasshopper springs.
Plant that seed right now. Spencer Michaud, Shu Yap, Astrological Retreat, Victoria, Australia.
Yep. Under the stars.
2023.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Definitely.
All right, everyone. I think that's what I've got for today. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we'll see you the next time. Peace.
See ya. Cool. Awesome.
All right. We did it.
How are you feeling?